Question 1. A video streaming company needs to process large video files into multiple formats before storing them in S3. The workload is unpredictable. Jobs should run in parallel for faster processing. They want to minimize operational overhead. Which AWS compute service should they use? Options: A. Amazon EC2 with auto-scaling. B. AWS Batch. C. Amazon Lambda. D. Amazon ECS with spot instances. Correct answer: B. AWS Batch. Explanation: AWS Batch automatically provisions and scales compute resources for batch jobs. No need to manage EC2 instances manually. Optimized for parallel, compute-intensive workloads. Why not other options? Option A, EC2 with auto-scaling requires manual scaling and management. Option C, Lambda is limited by execution time, 15 minutes max. Option D, ECS is container-based and requires more configuration for batch processing. Question 2. A financial services company wants to monitor AWS accounts for suspicious activity, unauthorized API calls, and unusual deployments. Which AWS service should they use? Options: A. AWS WAF. B. Amazon Macie. C. Amazon GuardDuty. D. AWS Shield Advanced. Correct answer: C. Amazon GuardDuty. Explanation: Amazon GuardDuty analyzes AWS CloudTrail, VPC flow logs, and DNS logs to detect security threats. Identifies unusual API calls and unauthorized access attempts. Automated threat detection for AWS accounts. Why not other options? Option A, AWS WAF protects web applications but doesn't monitor account activity. Option B, Macie finds sensitive data in S3 but doesn't monitor for threats. Option D, AWS Shield Advanced protects against DDoS attacks, not API threats. Question 3. A smart home company is building an IoT platform that collects real-time sensor data from devices worldwide. Handles millions of writes per second. Requires fast, low-latency reads and writes globally. Must scale dynamically without downtime. Which AWS database service should they use? Options: A. Amazon RDS PostgreSQL with read replicas. B. Amazon DynamoDB Global Tables. C. Amazon Redshift. D. Amazon Aurora Serverless. Correct answer: B. Amazon DynamoDB Global Tables. Explanation: DynamoDB Global Tables provide multi-region, active-active replication for global applications. Handles high-velocity writes with low-latency reads. Autoscales with no downtime. Why not other options? Option A, RDS PostgreSQL with read replicas is not ideal for high-speed IoT workloads. Option C, Redshift is for analytics, not real-time transactional workloads. Option D, Aurora Serverless scales automatically but isn't globally distributed. Question 4. A global e-commerce company requires a highly available relational database that can support read and write operations across multiple AWS regions. Automatically failover if the primary region goes down. Maintain strong consistency and low latency for transactions. Which database solution should they choose? Options: A. Amazon RDS with read replicas. B. Amazon Aurora Global Database. C. Amazon DynamoDB Global Tables. D. Amazon Redshift Multi-Cluster. Correct answer: B. Amazon Aurora Global Database. Explanation: Amazon Aurora Global Database provides automatic failover across AWS regions. Replication lag is typically under 1 second. Read and write operations are supported across multiple regions. Why not other options? Option A, RDS read replicas support only read operations, not writes. Option C, DynamoDB Global Tables is for NoSQL, not relational data. Option D, Redshift is for data warehousing, not transactional databases. Question 5. A company needs to provide temporary access to an S3 bucket for external vendors. Vendors should have access only for a limited time. Access should be granted programmatically. No long-term IAM credentials should be shared. What is the best way to achieve this? Options: A. Create an IAM user and share credentials with the vendor. B. Use AWS STS to generate temporary security credentials. C. Create an S3 bucket policy allowing vendor access permanently. D. Use AWS Secrets Manager to store credentials and share them with the vendor. Correct answer: B. Use AWS STS to generate temporary security credentials. Explanation: AWS STS, Security Token Service, generates temporary credentials with an expiration time. No need to create IAM users or long-term credentials. Access can be restricted to specific S3 objects. Why not other options? Option A. IAM user credentials are long-term and can be misused. Option C. A permanent bucket policy does not limit access duration. Option D. Secrets Manager stores credentials but doesn't generate temporary access tokens. Question 6. A financial firm runs a batch job for risk analysis every night. The job is not time-sensitive. It needs a high amount of compute power for a few hours. They want to minimize costs. Which EC2 pricing model should they use? Options: A. On-demand instances. B. Reserved instances. C. Spot instances with auto-scaling. D. Dedicated hosts. Correct answer: C. Spot instances with auto-scaling. Explanation: Spot instances offer up to 90% cost savings compared to on-demand. Auto-scaling ensures capacity when needed, and jobs can be retried if interrupted. Great for batch processing workloads that are fault-tolerant. Why not other options? Option A. On-demand is too expensive for non-time-sensitive jobs. Option B. Reserved instances are cost-effective for steady workloads, not batch jobs. Option D. Dedicated hosts are for compliance needs, not cost optimization. Question 7. A company needs to securely connect its AWS VPC to an on-premises network. They require a low-latency private connection. The connection must not traverse the public internet. Security and consistent bandwidth are critical. Which AWS service should they use? Options: A. AWS VPN, site-to-site VPN. B. AWS Direct Connect. C. AWS Transit Gateway. D. VPC peering. Correct answer: B. AWS Direct Connect. Explanation: AWS Direct Connect provides a dedicated network connection, bypassing the internet. Offers lower latency and more security than a VPN. Supports consistent bandwidth. Why not other options? Option A. VPN is cost-effective but uses the public internet and has higher latency. Option C. Transit Gateway connects multiple VPCs, not on-premises networks. Option D. VPC peering is for VPC to VPC connections, not hybrid cloud. Question 8. A healthcare company must continuously monitor AWS resources for compliance with industry regulations. They need automated alerts for security risks. They must enforce security policies automatically. The solution should require minimal manual intervention. Which AWS service should they use? Options: A. AWS Shield Advanced. B. AWS Config with AWS Lambda. C. Amazon Inspector. D. Amazon Guard Duty. Correct answer: B. AWS Config with AWS Lambda. Explanation: AWS Config continuously tracks AWS resource configurations for compliance violations. AWS Lambda can automatically remediate non-compliant configurations. Great for regulatory compliance enforcement. Why not other options? Option A. AWS Shield Advanced protects against DDoS attacks, not compliance monitoring. Option C. Amazon Inspector scans EC2 instances for vulnerabilities, not compliance. Option D. Guard Duty detects threats but does not enforce security policies. Question 9. A media streaming company wants to deploy an API that serves users globally. The API should automatically route requests to the nearest AWS region. It should handle sudden traffic spikes efficiently. Security is a top priority, and only authenticated users should be able to access it. Which AWS service should they use to meet these requirements? Options: A. Amazon API Gateway with AWS Lambda. B. Amazon CloudFront with AWS WAF. C. AWS Global Accelerator. D. Amazon Route 53 with latency-based routing. Correct answer: C. AWS Global Accelerator. Explanation: AWS Global Accelerator provides global load balancing with low-latency routing. It automatically routes API requests to the nearest AWS region. Built-in DDoS protection and automatic failover ensure high availability. Why not other options? Option A, API Gateway with Lambda is serverless but doesn't provide global traffic routing. Option B, CloudFront caches content but isn't suited for dynamic API requests. Option D, Route 53 only handles DNS-level routing, not full application acceleration. Question 10. A finance company has a multi-tier web application running on AWS. Frontend runs on EC2 instances in a public subnet. Backend database, Amazon RDS, is in a private subnet. Database access should be restricted to application servers only. No direct internet access should be allowed. Which networking setup is best? Options: A. Attach an elastic IP to the RDS instance. B. Use a NAT gateway to allow outbound internet access from the database. C. Use security groups and a VPC endpoint for database access. D. Enable public accessibility for RDS with IP restrictions. Correct answer: C. Use security groups and a VPC endpoint for database access. Explanation: RDS should be kept private in a private subnet. Security groups can limit access only to the web application. VPC endpoints allow private communication within AWS without using the public internet. Why not other options? Option A, elastic IP would make RDS public, increasing security risks. Option B, NAT gateway allows outbound internet but is unnecessary for private database communication. Option D, public RDS instances are not recommended for security reasons.